Okay, so this is an unusual start. I don't have John Cullen yet because although everything was working fine earlier today in testing, people will notice a blank screen here and an absolute and total jam up here. So we're gonna just get everything restarted. I've been working on this for about 30 minutes. Let's see if we are going out live here. Interesting array of issues. Now, many people will say, oh, Jason does these broadcasts and the deep state is attacking. I am not prepared to say that. It looks like we are live. We have 131 people watching. So we've got a couple things that we're gonna do to bring this together. My guest tonight, of course, is going to be John Cullen, and he's waiting for me right now. I am in communication with him. There have been a litany of technical problems just as I was about to hit go. This was all set and tested and ready. Let's see if we can make something happen here. I want to remind everyone who's watching to please subscribe to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. People can also go to the all-new crowdsourcethetruth.com. That is the official web page of Crowdsource the Truth, and you can become a sponsor there. You can access Patreon and Subscribestar. You know, I use this stuff every single day, and there's never a problem. And now we have John Cullen on, and no picture. Black. All these screens are black. Can people see this? Hard to say why that's happening, but we can't get John without that. We're going to improvise here, and let's see what we can make happen. John, stand by if you're watching. We're gonna get this to happen here. Okay. All right. This is going to be quite tricky, but perhaps we can make it work. Let's see if we can get Mr. Cullen on Skype. Let me just we're going to get him right now. There we go. Okay, so we're part of the way there, John.
Roger that, I'm here.
Okay, we've got you. Now, interestingly, there's been a total jam up here, and I have no ability to display video. Let's see, wait a minute. Okay, we're getting somewhere now. John, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right. Hang on, I've got a little bit of a feedback loop here. Bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
You good?
Okay.
You know, John, it's amazing because you and I have been in communication all day here, or since yesterday or whatever. We've tested quite a bit of this and everything was working. I'm not prepared to say that this is outside interference. Computers are complicated and things go wrong, and without any empirical evidence, I can't say for sure what's happening. I have received some direct threats from people who you know, who we're not going to mention because they are not worthy of that. But John, we're ready to go. Welcome back to the show. Welcome to all of our viewers. Sorry for that technical delay, but it's always a struggle. How's it going, John?
All right. I'm watching the feed, the chat, and I saw somebody said I hear nothing. So I'm not sure.
Nothing.
Yep. People are saying that maybe they don't hear the audio.
Well, let's check that, and we'll see what we've got. Don't hear the audio. I don't think that's correct because we should have audio.
Eric, I see Eric Schultz. Guys, if you can hear me,
John,
please
we're ready
put
to go.
In the chat.
Welcome back to the show. We've got audio happening for sure. So, okay, there's some people who like to tell us there's technical problems when they're not. And let's get past all that. We're 4 minutes into the show here. And John, what we want to talk about is the new information that you've brought forward. And before we do, I want to let our viewers know that you've recently started the John Cullen podcast, and people can listen to the John Cullen podcast by going to patreon.com and becoming a sponsor of John Cullen. You're going to want to go to patreon.com/I am John Cullen, become a sponsor of John, and you're going to get access to all of his wonderful podcast videos, and you're also going to help support a person who I believe has done the best and most solid research into the October 1st Las Vegas shooting. And you know, John, I say that because when you first proposed your theory, which is that helicopters were utilized during the attack, a lot of people found it difficult to believe. But as time has gone on, you have basically fortified, my mic is too boomy, people are saying. You have fortified this theory with just more evidence. It's amazing, really. What's the latest? What can you tell us here?
Well, I stumbled across some footage that I had never seen. It had been published October 1st, 2018, so a year after the attack. And it was published in Canada by someone who had attended. And when I watched this footage, it had been pointed out to me by one of the viewers who said, "Have you seen this?" And when I took a look at it, I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. So we released a podcast last night. It's been seen now by, I guess, about 2,500 people. And the question that we're asking is, what is this that we're seeing? Are these helicopters? If so, who are they? What are they doing? And doesn't this warrant further investigation? Now, I've put forth a hypothesis based on evidence as to who I think it is, but that's a hypothesis.
Right.
So it's kind of a two-step approach. The first step is acknowledging, is this in fact an aerial attack? And if in fact it is an aerial attack, who was behind it?
Right.
So this content gets to the heart of, was this in fact an aerial attack?
John, let's take a step back for a second, because I think we've got a lot of viewers with us who maybe haven't seen you before, aren't aware of all the research that you've done. What do you want to tell everybody about your work up until this point here?
Sure. So for those of you who are not familiar with my work, I started working on the Las Vegas shooting as it was happening. Living in Thailand, 10 p.m. in Las Vegas is noon in Thailand. So as it was happening and showed up on Drudge Report and stuff like that, I was watching and checking Twitter and checking Facebook for content. I spent the next 10 days sort of in a hunkered down mode at my office, sleeping 2 hours a day. I brought in an army cot and just hunkered down and started watching eyewitness footage. And somehow I saw these things in the sky, and I started asking questions and stumbled across the research of another YouTube guy named Truth Tracker, who had been looking at something called Flight Radar. And so I put Flight Radar and what I had seen together, and I realized that these aircraft that I was seeing were not on Flight Radar,
Right.
that they did not have transponders turned on,
Right.
and yet we were seeing them in eyewitness footage.
Flight Radar 24, of course, is an open source website anybody can go to and get a membership, and it allows you to track any aircraft that's operating in civilian airspace, right? What's the story with Flight Radar 24?
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it. I don't know if it shows every single aircraft operating. I'm not sure what the limitations are.
Commercial aircraft.
I believe so. And it's based on transponders, so you have to have a device inside your aircraft that's basically broadcasting your aircraft's name, registration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So Flight Radar shows us who's in the air, shows us planes taking off, planes landing, helicopters taking off, helicopters landing. And what I did was I studied, I don't know, 30 nights of flight radar content in order to understand what is normal, what's a typical night look like, and does flight radar have any kind of glitches or weird behavior. So I did a lot of work on that. And then I started downloading flight radar recordings from that night. And if you remember one of the first shows that you and I did together well over a year ago, I had recorded some footage that showed a Predator, or what I believe to be a Predator drone, that came in. And then that flight radar content was changed after the fact, after I published that video.
Yeah.
So that begs the question, who has the ability to go in and change content like that?
Right. Right. Obviously, Flight Radar 24, it's a website. Somebody can change the data on the website, and then everybody's getting, a different view of what went on. Another thing that's quite interesting, John, is I've really been focusing quite a bit on social engineering. It's something that I was totally unfamiliar with before I got involved in doing Crowdsource the Truth and before I started doing YouTube shows. But it seems like there's a really vast number of social engineers out there in the social media sphere, people who want to convince the public and create this kind of general sense of what the truth is, but it seems like so many of them are not actually telling people the truth, because you've presented evidence in terms of lights in the sky, the angles of the trajectory of the bullet wounds from the autopsies. None of these things match the concept of a single shooter in the hotel room there shooting at the crowd. Not to mention, it just makes no sense even trying to get into the mind of a psychopath. Why would one person shooting up a concert need 27 guns? You'd think you'd need one or two, maybe five, and just a ton of bullets. One guy can't operate more than two guns at the same time. So 27 makes no sense. You also came on this show months ago and showed us video content that had been released from the Las Vegas Metro PD body cams that showed the window of Paddock's hotel room wasn't even broken after the time that Paddock was dead.
That's right. That's right. Nothing makes sense. And the reason nothing makes sense is because this is not what really happened. And in order to get to what really happened, it requires critical thinking, a tremendous amount of work, and watching videos that, quite frankly, are unpleasant to watch.
Yes.
Sitting here and watching this stuff over and over and over again, it takes a toll.
No, it's had a major psychological impact on really everyone. Anyone who is an American, the concept that these mass shootings are happening all the time. Now, we've got Joe Napoli in the comments with us, and people who haven't seen our broadcasts before maybe have missed some of the shows we've done with Joe. Joe and his wife, of course, were at the concert in attendance. They were shot at. Joe was the first person to alert me that this had happened at all, because 10 o'clock in Las Vegas is 1 a.m. in New York. Joe, his wife, and their friends were corralled over to the Tropicana for hours. And when Joe called me at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in Vegas, it was about 7 o'clock in the morning in New York. And it was my first indication that this event had occurred. And it's basically what triggered my involvement in looking into the shooting. And John, I know you remember that Joe Napoli had told us that he heard shooters all around him. Joe's first instinct, even though he's not a gun expert, not a firearms kind of guy, he saw spent shell casings outside in the parking lot of the Tropicana. Now, unless Stephen Paddock was teleporting shell casings, a huge distance from the Mandalay Bay Hotel, that makes no sense either. But your theory, which is now backed by increasingly compelling evidence, would explain how shell casings could arrive on the ground outside the Tropicana, because they could be fired from a helicopter and fall straight to the ground.
That's right. Now, it's important to keep in mind, though, that there's no such thing as proof.
Right.
In the world of science, which is the world that I come from, we don't use the word proof. We use the word evidence.
Right.
So we've accumulated a tremendous amount of evidence that's consistent with this hypothesis that it's an aerial assault. Right, so what we have here that we just published last night, this new video, is further evidence that further corroborates the other evidence that it's an aerial assault.
Right.
So does any evidence, right, is it proof? No. No. But is it evidence, right? So the fact that we've got...
Let me just add one thing to that, John, because I'm totally with you. Sure. The concept of proof in and of itself is sort of fluid. It depends. Are we talking about math? There's one definition of proof. Are we talking about a criminal court in the United States, a civil court in the United States, another country? So I agree with you. We're looking at evidence, and frankly, the more evidence has come out, the less likely it seems that Paddock was the shooter or even shot at all. And the more likely, it seems, that these helicopters were utilized. We can't go through the litany of evidence in this show, but people should go back and watch all the episodes we've done on crowdsourcethetruth.com and the Crowdsource the Truth YouTube channel. People can also subscribe to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel and watch all of John's videos. He's got exclusive videos on patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and people can see his new podcast by going to that channel on Patreon. John, maybe we should get right into the new footage that you've just brought out. Should we do that?
Certainly, if you can pull it up on your monitor.
Have you got the screen share? Can you see it on the screen share?
Yeah, I see it.
Great. Okay. So now sorry, I had all that confusion at the outset. So you've sent me a set of in and out points. Now, where were the in and out points for this long video? That was for the big video. I've got it right here. Okay. So we want to start at, see that? I didn't anticipate. That's a little tricky for me to see. So our first clip is 3:23, yeah? Oh, no. That's the short clip.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm in a bit of disarray here because of that foul up at the start.
Take your time.
Now, you had sent me the big video, right? The big video I have over here. So, okay. Give us a little background while I pull this thing up.
So, at the very beginning of the attack, during any old bar stool, we have synchronized footage that's looking both westbound towards the Luxor and eastbound towards the airport. When we're looking westbound towards the Luxor, we see aircraft behind the Luxor in the airspace that would be over the freeway.
Right. Okay.
And we see two aircraft back there. So in this footage, we just want to get everybody oriented to the venue, the Mandalay Bay, the Luxor, the Tropicana, where Joe Napoli saw the spent brass casings.
Yeah.
So as this video begins, we're heading northbound up Las Vegas Boulevard. And the Harley dealer, where the helicopter landed, is down towards the bottom. Mandalay Bay's on the left. You see the Luxor just north of it. You see the venue just east of the Luxor, the Tropicana, just past the venue. And you can see the fuel tanks down to the right.
Yeah.
So now that you understand where the venue is, this is where the venue is on flight radar.
Right.
So when we go to flight radar, here's where we see the venue, the Mandalay Bay, the Luxor. And what we see happening at 10:05 p.m. are the two Sundance helicopters coming in land. And at the same exact moment on flight radar, we see United Airlines 599 coming in land. But we're going to look at this area behind the Luxor, and we're going to look at the area back here behind the tanks. And what we see is there's no aircraft back here. There's nobody flying around.
Now, where does this animation come from, John?
This is Flight Radar 24.
So that's official radar data, FAA type stuff. You didn't make this video.
No. I just recorded it.
Right. Okay.
So United Airlines 599 comes in on approach, and they touch down. They touch the tarmac at the same time that the final Sundance does. And the reason that's important is it means that as they both touch down at 10:05, there's nothing in the air after that.
Right.
There's no other aircraft that comes in and lands after UAL 599 until a few minutes later. So after 10:05, there's nothing flying in the vicinity of what we're about to look at. You see Sundance 1 and Sundance 2. Here they come. And now we're going to look over towards the Luxor. And near the Luxor, this is during any old bar stool, just south of the Luxor, just south of the pyramid, we catch a flash. And the
again,
flash
it might be a little difficult for people to see on my rebroadcast of your video, so people can go back to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel, or they can get onto patreon.com/IamJohnCullen and see a higher resolution, less compressed version of this. But we see the dots, even with all this compression, and you're doing a great job of highlighting those. See a dot flying around.
Right. So that's not a seagull wearing a headlamp.
Right.
Right. Right. That's not a moth flying around over the Luxor. Right. So that's an aircraft, and that aircraft is not visible on flight radar. And we now have two aircraft in this airspace, one south of the Luxor to the left, one north of the Luxor. So there's two on this side. The footage that we discovered from Canada takes place at the same exact moment. And while we were watching this footage and finding these helicopters flying around behind the Luxor, if you scrub forward to 757 in the video, if you scrub forward to 757, you'll see that we found something else that was pretty remarkable.
757 coming right up. Stand by. So this new footage that you've just discovered, we're almost 2 years after the event, and you found this footage. It was published by Canadian Broadcasting, or what was that? Something like that.
Some Ottawa Citizen News or something like some publisher in Ottawa. I forget exactly.
So this should be it coming right up.
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
Okay.
So as I'm watching this footage and I'm tracking these things, remember a couple months ago we pointed out these what appear to be a laser on the back of the stage. And I said, this looks like an infrared laser that's getting picked up.
How could it be so big?
Well, because if you're 500 feet in the air, the dot on the laser, plus the dot on the laser is adjustable. So you can adjust the dot. All right, so this is an infrared laser, which means you don't see it with the naked eye. And look what we see pointing at the Sphinx.
That's amazing that you spotted that. Now, how do we know that somebody didn't add this dot to the video?
I don't think, I don't know. It's just eyewitness video. I don't think anybody had the time or inclination to do it.
Okay.
We've had that video for months, but it matches what we see here on the back of the stage. It matches the laser that we saw in the SUV. The SUV video that I did got 250,000 views.
Yeah, that definitely had a laser. So these are different videos. The Sphinx video you had, the one from the back of the stage, is new video that shows even more lasers. So it's more videos of lasers.
Correct. And these lasers, these are $8,000 lasers. These are, this is not something you go buy at Cabela's. This is a pretty big deal. These are infrared. They're invisible to the naked eye. But when you're wearing night vision goggles, it shows up. But interestingly, some smartphones don't have an infrared filter, and they pick up infrared light. And so that's how we were able to see the dot on the Sphinx and on the back of the stage.
Let me elaborate on that for a second, John, because what some people might not know is that actually, unlike traditional film, motion picture film, you required a special formulation to be sensitive to infrared light. All digital sensors are sensitive to a wide spectrum of the electromagnetic, frequency range beyond what the human eye can see. So Every digital camera normally has some degree of infrared filtration, but it is possible to overwhelm the filter in the camera with more infrared light than it's capable of filtering. And as you accurately point out, depending on what kind of cell phone you have, it can be more or less sensitive to infrared.
That's right. And we did a video on that topic alone, just on the infrared cameras and the capabilities of which cameras can do it, which cameras can't.
Right.
And I think what we're seeing here is an infrared laser on the Sphinx. I think we're seeing one on the back of the stage. I think we're seeing one on the SUV. This is called corroborated evidence.
Yes.
It's when you see the same phenomenon again and again on different footage. That's corroborated evidence. That means it's not an outlier. It's confirmed. Right?
It also makes it less likely that someone would have forged that by painting a laser on there in post-production, because you now would need multiple independent people to do that.
Yeah, and why would you do that? What would the motive of
Well, there's a lot of people that do things that don't make sense to you or I, but they want to trick people, and they want to introduce confusion and chaos. They want to convince people that you're wrong, that I'm wrong, that they shouldn't be looking at this stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're seeing here. I think
I agree.
these guys are in helicopters. They're hanging out the side. They've got lasers on their rifles, and they're screwing around. They're pointing at the Sphinx.
And
I
John,
get it.
You also identified an eyewitness, a piece of testimony from a local radio station where an eyewitness that you and I haven't interviewed said on that radio broadcast that she personally saw a helicopter with guys hanging out the sides, and she swore to God that she saw shooting out of the helicopter.
Yep, that's Clarissa, and I've done a number of videos that feature Clarissa's testimony, and Clarissa's absolutely certain that there's helicopters. She said, I see these guys facing out of the helicopters. They're not sitting in the helicopter in the normal way. So I believe the eyewitness. I believe Clarissa. I have no reason not to believe her. Right. And based on the photographic evidence that we see here, it sounds like Clarissa may be one of the few people that saw through the fog of war. If you scrub forward to 12:20 in that same video, what we'll see are the Sundance helicopters returning on eyewitness footage. And as the Sundance helicopters return, there's two that take off, there's two that return. But what we're going to see here in this footage at perfect, you've got it. Here comes Sundance. And this is the first Sundance returning. So we see this aircraft on flight radar. So everything's corroborated, right? Everything is synchronized. Everything is corroborated. We see that aircraft come in. Perfect. Everything lines up. Then a few seconds later, at 40 seconds later at 1300, we see Sundance number 2 come in.
Yeah, it's, the problem is I got it on a monitor far away because of our screwed up start, and I can't really see the numbers, but I think we'll get there.
No problem. You got it. You're there.
There we go.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah.
So here comes another aircraft coming in from the left. And this is the second Sundance, and this is also on flight radar.
Right.
So we see this aircraft coming in. It's corroborated. We've got eyewitness footage. We have flight radar footage. Everything lines up.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, we don't, the concept of proof is something that I find people say, oh, you don't have proof, but you just keep adding more evidence,
I'm not saying it's proof. I'm asking who are they, what are they doing, and will somebody please lend a hand and help me out here?
Yeah. And there's all kinds of different and disparate pieces of evidence that come together to help us, gravitate towards the strongest hypothesis. Certainly none of us know exactly what happened. We're trying to make the best hypothesis we can from available evidence. I want to point out, I think this is worth mentioning. People might recall right after the shooting, I went to Vegas. I met with Laura Loomer. I met with Jake Morphonios. Jake joined me on a trip to Maverick helicopters. I had suggested we should go over there. And he came with me, and we interviewed a guy at Maverick. Jake took a lot of pictures of the helicopters and all that. And I remember at the time thinking, boy, he really rushed to get that video out, and I was a little bit kind of irritated by that because I felt like it was my idea to go there, and he seemed to release it with such speed that he was trying to beat me to the punch. And at the time, I just figured, you know, he wanted to get a scoop or have the story out quickly at first or whatever, and I wasn't particularly upset about that. But he comes back to sort of gatekeep this story throughout the time that you and I have been communicating with each other.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I mean, again, you and I have talked about the GEC, the State Department's, Smith-Mundt Act department that is funded to basically create fear, uncertainty, and doubt online and social media.
Well, its official designation is to combat foreign propaganda. The Global Engagement Center was developed in 2016 in close correlation with the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which updated that Smith-Mundt Act that previously made it illegal to use propaganda against citizens of the United States. The President Barack Obama made it legal to use propaganda against the people of the United States. So, for instance, John, if it were discovered that a foreign military power, let's, for the sake of argument, hypothetically suggest the Saudi Arabian National Guard, if they were to attack civilians in a major U.S. city and kill a significant number and maim and destroy the lives of hundreds of Americans, that's essentially an act of war. And under this modernized Smith-Mundt Act, the government, at its own discretion, could choose to lie to us about that rather than reveal what we're proposing is the truth, which is that these helicopters owned by the Saudi Arabian National Guard may in fact have been used. And there's a lot of reasons. People are saying, why would they do this? Do we want to get into any of that, or do we want to continue? You still have more evidence to share.
I think for today's show, I think we want to just simply focus on, was this an aerial attack?
Right.
Let's not get into who is behind it. The who is behind it becomes even easier to wrap your head around when you realize the scale.
Right.
So with the footage that we just discovered, I had to do a bit of a mea culpa, because for the last year and a half or so, I thought there were 3 helicopters attacking. And now I stand corrected. There's not 3 helicopters attacking, there's more. And that is scary. And I think the first time I told you this, and I called you and I said, Jason, I can't believe what I just found. I'm stunned.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to release this. This is spectacular. So if you cue forward to 1425 in the footage.
Oh, wait, well, there's one more piece that you wanted to show. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the 3rd aircraft that comes flying in. So from this one vantage point, this is one camera, we see 1, 2, 3 aircraft coming in from the left. And the problem here is there's only 2 Sundance helicopters. So who's this 3rd aircraft? And again, there's nothing on flight radar. So that's not a jet landing. It's moving at the same velocity as the first 2 helicopters. So that would probably make that a helicopter, right? It's moving at the same speed. So this 3rd aircraft that comes in from the left is not visible on this next footage that we found until the very, very end. Okay, so remember this 3rd aircraft that comes in from the left that's in front of Aldine's face. Remember that, because that comes in at the very, very end of this new footage. We think this new footage is a smoking gun. So what you see here is Sundance, that's Sundance 2, coming in for a landing. They pass behind the stage. So that's the blinking red light. That was Sundance. The red circles are unidentified objects.
Unidentified meaning they're not accounted for on Flight Radar 24. They're hovering in the air. They can't be aircraft. They can't be fixed-wing commercial aircraft. They're helicopters.
If they're fixed-wing commercial aircraft, they're heading right into the camera because they're not moving. Now, the one on the right is moving.
Each of them would be doing that.
Correct. Now, the one that's furthest to the right, closest to the stage, is clearly moving to the right, and we see that same aircraft over Tall Ace of Spades' shoulder. Tall Ace of Spades turns to his left, and we saw that aircraft in his film. So when you watch this footage, Sundance comes in, we see clearly 3 aircraft hovering. 1, 2, 3. One of them is directly over the tank. One of them is just to the south of the edge of the tank. And then one of them is off to the right and is moving to the right a bit closer to the stage.
And now, John,
So
this
we
is
see these 3.
this is particularly excellent work by you, because viewers might be confused right now. They see some other illuminated dots sort of dancing around. Those are internal reflections of the lens of whatever camera this
Right.
person was using, and you've done a very good job of identifying those. We can see that they move at a much different speed because of the...
Right, that's lens flare.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the difference between lens flare, and these are objects that are, the 2 on the left are stationary. The one on the right is slowly moving to the right. And so if these were jets on approach, those 2 that we see out there in the middle, they'd have to be heading right at the camera, which means they'd not be heading to the runway, right? So if they're heading right at the camera, they're not pointing at the runway. If they're heading to the runway, they'd have to be moving left to right, and we don't see that happening here.
Right.
And they probably would be bleeding altitude, right? Now, those 3 are the 3 that are most easily seen. But during this, if you want to bring up the 33-second video that I sent you, that
Yep.
shorter video clip,
Yep.
if you pull that up, there is a moment in here where we're going to see some muzzle flash.
Give me just a
And
moment
I need,
to grab
and I need to, while you're doing that, I want to talk to the people about muzzle flash.
Sure.
There's a very good chance that the shooters who are on the helicopters are using suppressors. And what that means is you don't hear the sound of the bang that the gun makes, but what you do hear is the sound of the bullet when it passes within 125 feet of you. These bullets that these guys are firing travel supersonically.
So
And
you're
as the
hearing
bullet-
the breaking of the sound barrier.
That's exactly right. But you only hear the breaking of the sound barrier if the bullet passes within 125 feet. If the bullet's 200, 300 feet away
Of
from you,
you.
you're not going to hear it.
Right.
Correct. Correct.
The
Of
other
you
thing
or
I
your
wanted to
microphone.
point out, John, Joe Napoli, Stephanie's friend, everyone we've spoken to, firsthand witnesses to this shooting, describe running away from the venue and feeling like they were being chased, like there were shooters all around. Every eyewitness has said that.
That's right. And this, again, that's consistent with the hypothesis. It's not proof, but it's consistent with the hypothesis.
Right.
So in this shorter clip, if we cue this up to 16 seconds, if you scrub to 16 seconds,
Right about there?
right at 16,
Yeah, I can't really
and
see.
I don't know if you have the ability to play it real slow or to go through one frame at a time, but hit play
Yeah,
at
we could do that.
16. Let's see what happens. Let's see if you
Sorry.
guys see it.
Let me kill that audio. There we go.
Okay.
Tell me when you want to
So-
frame it.
All right, so let me see if I can tell you where to focus. There's a thing in the middle of the picture that looks like a real tall light tree that's not lit up,
Yeah.
right in the middle. And at 16 seconds, you're going to see a muzzle flash there. So let's take a
Really?
look at that. Yeah, go to 16 seconds again, and let's see if we can see that.
All right, let me see if I can get right there.
And if you can get to 16 and maybe go one frame at a time until it lights up. About 1/3 of the way from the left edge of the screen, there's something that looks like a big, tall lighting structure, but the lights aren't on.
This thing, right?
Uh-huh, that's it, And right underneath the top of it, to the right of its stalk, to the right of its trunk, you're going to see a muzzle flash at 16 seconds if you go frame by frame. One frame at a time. And it's just going to go pop. I sent you a couple still photos, and those still photos I sent you have it highlighted.
It's hard to see in
It's
the
okay.
video. Maybe I should bring up
I
the
see
still
it.
photo.
I can
You
see
see
it.
it?
Yeah, no, meaning I can see the dots. If you get to it, it'll pop up. Keep going. Go one
We're at
frame at a time.
24 seconds. Hang on, let me go back to 16.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go back to 16. Bear with us, guys. It's worth it.
So there's 14 seconds.
Mhm.
15 seconds.
Right by that light tree on the right-hand side of its trunk. Go frame by frame to 16.
I think we're at 16 there. Oh,
Keep going.
Is that it?
That's it. You got it.
So there's a dot right there.
That's it. All right. Now, if somebody has a suppressor on their rifle, that's all you're going to see. This isn't a Schwarzenegger movie. Right? This isn't The Untouchables. There's no special effects here. If there's a suppressor, right. Now, you're going to see that at 16, and then when we go to 20 seconds, there's another shooter to the right of that one and a bit below it.
So now we're seeing there's shooters up in those lighting things?
No, I believe that's another helicopter that does not have its light on. That's another helicopter that's completely dark at the moment, right? You got it. You got it. So that's a helicopter that's completely dark. He takes a shot. Now, you don't hear that shot because that bullet doesn't pass within 125 feet of the microphone. And it's a suppressed shot. So it's very hard to see. And that should be your expectation. Any shots that are coming from those other helicopters that appear to have their lights on, Ben Sweeney said that the helicopters were shining their lights in his room, right? So now if we go forward to 20 seconds, if you scrub to 20 seconds on that same video,
yep,
you're gonna, and we do the same step by step.
That's 20 right there.
Okay. Now if you go step by step, look a little bit below, a little bit lower and a little to the right of where you just saw that last dot, and as you go step by step, you're going to see another shot.
Oh, I think that was it.
And it should be at 20 seconds. There's actually two of them in the 20-second set of 24 frames or whatever we've got to work with.
All right, so here's 19. There's
Go to
20.
Up. I saw it. I just saw it. Go back. I just saw it.
Oh, I think I saw it too. Right there.
Uh-huh. You got it.
Right
That's
there.
it.
Wow.
That's
I don't know how you spot this stuff, man. It's
I
unbelievable.
go frame by frame. I go
What do you
frame
call
by
it?
frame.
Weaponized autism?
You got it. Frame by frame on a 42-inch monitor. And I find 1 pixel of light in 1 frame of video.
Amazing.
And that's a shooter. Now, the building where that shooter is, you see the shape of the building underneath there, right? You see that building? That building is just south of the tanks. Uh-huh. You're pointing at it. Right. And that building is right near Janet Airlines. That's right by Janet. It's videopoker.com, that building, by the way.
Okay. Interesting.
So now we've seen one to the right of what appears to be that lighting tree. We've seen another shot. So now with the 3 that are hovering, the 2 we just found, that's 5. And then at the end of the video, if you scrub towards the end at 31 seconds, you'll see the one from that earlier video that was flying in from the left comes into the left-hand side. You'll see a little tiny dot on the left edge at 31 seconds, and he's going to come in from the left side. And so that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that we see on this side of the venue.
Here's 31.
Plus the other 2 at 31. Okay, now hit play. You'll see on the left side, on the left edge, you're going to see him coming from the left.
I don't know if I can see that.
You'll see it. Keep going. Keep going.
We're at 33 seconds already. Let's see. All right, here's 30.
Mm-hmm. It comes in from the left
31.
side. It may be tough to
I
see.
It. I see it.
Okay, there you go.
I think I see it.
So he comes in from the left. It may be tough to see. That's it. And it may be tough to see with the compression again, but on if you go
there
to
it is.
the
There it is. There it is. We see it right there.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we had 3 aircraft hovering. We had 2 that took some shots, it appears, and then we have this other one that comes in from the left.
It's right here, John, as he zooms out, right? Or as he moves a little bit to the left.
That's right.
And there it is, hanging on the edge of the left edge of the frame there.
That's right. So that makes 6 on that side, and then the 2 over by the Luxor. That's 8. Let's say I'm wrong about 2 of these. Let's say 2 of these are approaching jets. and it's not 8, it's 6. Let's say I'm wrong about 4 of these 6, and there's only really 2 over here. There's 2 over here and 2 by the Luxor. It's still 4. A week and a half ago, I thought 3 helicopters attacked Vegas. Based on this new evidence, I think we're looking at closer to 6 or 8.
Wow.
And these things are flying in a circle around the venue. And then at 10:09 p.m., that's when we see 3 helicopters between the Mandalay and the Delano.
Yeah. Wow. You know, John, I was looking earlier today, just looking up these AH-6I helicopters manufactured by Boeing. I'm not sure if people are aware that Boeing and McDonnell Douglas merged some time ago, and this, I think, was a McDonnell Douglas helicopter.
That's right.
But now is
That's right. It's the MD-500.
Yeah.
That's right. It's based on the MD-500. The MD-500's very, very popular helicopter. And Boeing purchased the McDonnell Douglas Helicopter Company and got these assets, and now they manufacture the AH-6I, but there is a McDonnell Douglas helicopter, I believe, near Boeing, and they kind of work together.
It's right across the street. It's called MD Helicopters.
There you go. There you go. So I don't know what technology they're providing. I do know that the MD-500...
Training. I believe the MD Helicopters is training.
There you go. Well, an interesting fact is that the MD-500 was available in a no-tar version. No-tar means no tail rotor. Basically, it uses a ducted fan to blow air out the tail, and it's very quiet. It's a very quiet helicopter. But Boeing did not get the no-tar license, so Boeing is not making, or to my knowledge, is not making a no-tar version of the AH-6I. And from the evidence, these things are quiet. So I'm wondering if they have some sort of an active noise cancellation system that acts like Bose headphones, except with speakers, that cancels the sound.
I don't think that would be able to work in that way. The Bose cancellation works because it's isolated over your ears. But it is intended to be a stealth helicopter, smaller.
Yeah, these things are quiet. Yeah, they're very, very quiet. Very quiet.
I also found a number of articles. This is one from June of 2016, AIN Online, a defense website of some kind, talking about Boeing readies the first AH-6I for delivery to Saudi Arabia. And this is at Boeing's facility in Mesa, Arizona, which is right across the street from MD Helicopters. You've presented a lot of video on the John E. Hoover YouTube channel that included General Frank Muth and his discussions about training the Saudi Arabian National Guard with these particular helicopters. There's just so much evidence, John, supporting this theory, and it's strange to me that there have been people who are insistent that we shouldn't even look at this, that you're somehow injecting false information, but that doesn't seem to hold water in my view.
Yeah, I'm just looking at evidence. I'm just looking at other eyewitness footage, and I see things in the footage that other people just, I guess, don't see. This
and you're
footage
pointing it
had
out
been
to all of us.
Yeah, this footage had 7,000 views. And in the comment section, nobody mentioned the helicopters. Nobody saw these aircraft in the comment section. At 7,000 views, I took a look at it and said, oh my God, this is a smoking gun. Yeah. They're all here. And it's bigger than I ever expected.
Now,
and scarier than that.
Nuffin is here in the comments telling us that the aircraft is quiet, but it's got a small operational envelope. I guess that means it doesn't have the range of a larger helicopter. Is that the idea?
I think that's what that person means, and I believe what they probably did was flew to some sort of a warehouse nearby, and this way they had the ability to refuel. Nobody's keeping tabs on these guys. These guys own these helicopters.
Well, not only that, John, these helicopters are small enough. I mean, I can't say that I've seen this, but I've seen helicopters fold the rotors back, and you could wheel this thing into a back of an 18-wheeler, drive it from Mesa, Arizona to Las Vegas, park it in a warehouse, gas it up, roll it out into the parking lot, and take it off, and nobody would even know it was there. Absolutely true.
Absolutely true. So I don't have. Yeah, go ahead.
Jennifer Mediso is watching us on Periscope, and she wants to know, what about drones? I don't know that drones fit into this part of the hypothesis.
So if you go to the Johnny Hoover channel, you can search across all the videos and just put in the word witness, and you'll find a number of videos with witness testimony, with witnesses who are saying, was it a helicopter? We have witnesses who are saying, I'm absolutely 100% positive it was a helicopter, because I saw people hanging off the side of it. I could see their heads. So when you hear that from an eyewitness, that tells me it's not a drone. Right. There's also something called Occam's razor. And Occam's razor says the simplest explanation is most often the explanation.
Right.
So the simplest scenario is a bunch of guys got in helicopters with a bunch of small arms and shot this place up.
Didn't we hear a lot of people say that they heard, I'm forgetting the name of the weapon now, a 249, some kind of...
a saw. Yeah, the 249 saw. That's right. And based on the wounds and what we saw in the autopsies, and I think we've come out that I was the source of the autopsies to you, right? That's come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I received the autopsies and put out a video before anybody in the mainstream media, before anybody in the alternate media, and I then provided the autopsies to Jason. So the autopsies were leaked to me as they were released to the media. I got a copy from one of the big networks, and what we saw in these autopsies was consistent with helicopters, with a helicopter attack, right? And so the combination of these witness statements, the combination of evidence in the autopsies, none of it is proof. All of it is evidence.
Right.
And when the evidence starts to pile up in a pile that's this significant,
can't be ignored.
That's it, right? You can't just dismiss it. So I keep coming back to, who was it? Now the wounds. This is the FN Mini-Me saw, and what that means is this is chambered in 5.56 NATO, which is the military equivalent of 223.
Wait a minute.
So
you're over my head now. You're talking about the SAW 249 gun?
Right. So this gun is available in two different calibers. One is 7.62, which is like a 308, which is very high power. And if people were getting shot with that, we would have seen people with their arms off and, with half a leg and stuff like that.
Wow.
This is a 5.56 version, and it's a smaller version. It's lighter weight, and you can put that up in a helicopter, shoot that from a helicopter very easily. It's 5.56, which is the same caliber as an AR-15. And so when you get shot with one of these at a distance of 500 yards, 600 yards, 800 yards, the bullet has lost a fair amount of its kinetic energy. Mm-hmm. And when it hits you, it doesn't make that much of a wound compared to a 7.62 or 308, a higher powered weapon. So this particular weapon and this particular round, if fired at a range of 500, 600, 700 yards, the wounds we expect would be kind of a low energy wound. It would be similar to the wound you would see from like a 22 if you were shot at a reasonable distance. Now, as the helicopters fly over the venue, the distance from the shooters to the victims goes down to 450, 500 feet, not yards. And that's when we see devastating wounds where people got hit and the bullet went through this and through that and through this and through that.
Right.
So you've got people that got shot from 500, 600, 700 yards away, and then you have people who were shot from 450, 500 feet away.
Right. And John, you've also, in your videos on the John E. Hoover YouTube channel, you've shown us various Boeing, I don't know if they're marketing films or training films or whatever they are, but they actually show this AH-6I in exactly that configuration with commandos hanging out the doors on the skids, firing guns at people. This is what they are for, to insert a small team into a city or some area where you want to go in quietly, shoot, and leave.
That's right. These guys were in and out in 11 minutes.
Right.
In and out in 11 minutes. The shooting starts at 10:05 and it's over at 10:16. Done.
So people are desperate to know, the who's, the whys, we don't know that. As you've said many times, you're looking at video evidence and you are arriving at conclusions, or I should say, you're building a hypothesis. And in my view, as we've gone on and looked at more and more of this evidence, your hypothesis has just gotten stronger. If this is what happened, it makes a lot of sense that the FBI would cover this up at all expenses. They do not want the public to know that Saudi Arabia, if this is true, did a military incursion into Las Vegas, killed American citizens. I mean, that is an act of war. There would be calls for war against Saudi Arabia. And of course, viewers of Crowdsource the Truth know that President Trump, or any president of the United States, unfortunately, will never allow that to happen while the petrodollar remains an active system in the world of finance.
That's right.
The entire value of the U.S. economy is based on this petrodollar system that forces every country everywhere in the world buying or selling oil to do it only in U.S. dollars. And Saudi Arabia is the key partner in that system. And it feels to me like Saudi Arabia is holding that over the United States head in a way that allows Saudi Arabia to do whatever it wants. Because if this came out, John, people would call into question Boeing's business relationship with Saudi Arabia. There are so many things that people would be outraged about if this came to light, that there's a desperate effort to cover up your work, to cover up anything that you and I say about this, and we see that happening in real time.
Yeah. It's a stunning set of circumstances. And if what I believe happened is what happened, you're looking at an internal civil war that's playing out inside of Saudi Arabia that came to a peak on the night of November the 4th, the night of 1,000 swords.
May I correct you just slightly? I don't know that an internal civil war is quite accurate, but it's warring factions within the Saudi Arabian royal family that are...
I'll go with that.
Bringing their war to the streets of the United States. It's not the people of Saudi Arabia that are involved in the war. It's the royals.
Yeah, no,
and the other evidence that supports your theory, John, just right after this, Mohammed bin Salman, and you and I are not endorsing him as a political leader, as a king. We're not endorsing anything that Mohammed bin Salman does or stands for necessarily. We're just pointing out that he's the youngest guy to ever ascend to the throne in modern Saudi Arabia. He's controversial in that he has changed things around so that women can now drive, and he's sort of, bucking the system there in Saudi Arabia. We know Al-Walid bin Talal owns the top 4 floors of the Mandalay Bay. His company, Kingdom Holdings, owns 45% of the boutique hotel inside the Mandalay Bay, right?
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't prove that this is what happened. But when we look at these helicopters and we see these aircraft and we say, okay, there's too much evidence that this was an aerial attack. We're not buying the narrative. The narrative just doesn't add up. There's too much evidence that the narrative is incorrect. So we go looking for shooters. And I was looking for shooters on rooftops.
People were asking in the comments about that. There were people running on the rooftops. What about that? It could be spotters. It could be more.
That's great. That's great, right? So people running on rooftops. That's what I started looking for. And if
John, hello. All right, we're losing John. We'll wait a minute. Are we still John, you got me?
With the network.
Whoa. John?
I'm here. We lost our connection for a moment.
Okay, so you're back. One thing I wanted to point out, John, that also supports what you're saying, Al-Walid bin Talal is a well-known enemy of Donald Trump. He's one of the wealthiest men in Saudi Arabia. He owned a news agency which Jamal Khashoggi was a correspondent for. We all know Jamal Khashoggi was chopped up into little tiny pieces at the Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey. And certainly if he were participating in a coup, as you've described it, in a Al-Walid bin Talal loyalty group that was trying to assassinate anybody there, certainly that would be motivation to have him assassinated, wouldn't it?
Well, you've got a bunch of cousins that are of the same generation as MBS, right? So Al-Walid bin Talal, Mohammed bin, you've got bin Mukrin, you've got a whole bunch of these cousins that are older than MBS. And so they all feel as though they should be king. And in particular, Al-Walid is the wealthiest guy in the kingdom and a direct descendant of Ibn Saud, felt he should be king. And so when you have all these guys who, we looked at this article from The Guardian from 2 years before the attack, and it was basically an admission that they were planning a coup d'etat. We had statements from MBS that he was afraid of a coup d'etat. So they knew that something was being planned. I don't think they expected that it would take place in America. And there have been other attempts on MBS's life.
Well,
so this is not an outrageous claim.
Just days after the shooting took place, John, there was a shooting at a palace, I believe, in Jeddah. We should also, this has got to come out again, because Jake Morphonios came on this program. He deceived me in our phone calls prior to his appearance, because he made it clear that you and he had a misunderstanding. I offered to have a private conference call between the three of us before the show to work out and understand whatever misunderstanding might be there. He said, no, I don't need that. I'll be professional if he's going to be professional. And I said, okay. Came on here, started accusing you of not being in Thailand. Do we want to, I know you don't like talking about this too much.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that there's a number of people out there whose role is to discredit guys like you, guys like me, that are bringing information like this to the forefront. And I'm sure they don't have anything nice to say about Project Veritas and any of the stuff that they've discovered. At the end of the day, what I'm bringing to the forefront, what you're bringing to the forefront, is highly controversial. It has geopolitical ramifications, if we're correct, right? And I'm simply saying, who are these guys? What are they doing? Who are they? What are they doing? And doesn't this warrant further investigation? But the Las Vegas Metro Police Department closed the investigation. The FBI closed their investigation. So now, what am I putting forward that's disinformation? I'm putting forward evidence. This is evidence. I think this is an aerial attack. And I've put forward 250 videos that have over 4 million views. And I'd say 95 to 98% thumbs up and positive responses, where people are saying, oh my God, this appears it was an aerial attack.
Yeah.
Once you get to that point, you start to say, well, who could possibly show up to this thing with 6 helicopters that don't go reported stolen the next day? And what would the motive be? Why would anybody do something like this? So when you start researching it, you find out, well, it turns out there's a bunch of Saudi guys that want to kill a Saudi prince, and there's a bunch of Saudi helicopters nearby, and the Saudi prince likes to go to Las Vegas and hang out at the Four Seasons. Things start adding up.
Right. People are speculating that the FBI would close the investigation if high-ranking government people were involved. I mean, that's consistent with what we're saying. It's this notion that they just, no matter what, absolutely cannot let this information get out that there was a foreign military attack within the United States. The last thing I'll say about Jake Morphonios is that he claims to have presented evidence that Mohammed bin Salman was in Russia, so therefore he couldn't have been in Las Vegas. And I'll point out, we're not saying Mohammed bin Salman was in Vegas. He may have been, he may not have been. We have seen no evidence to support either conclusion. However, the problem with Jake Morphonios is he came on this show and he said he called the Saudi Arabian embassy and they told him information about the whereabouts of the of the prince, which the Saudi Arabian embassy confirmed to me and Joe Napoli is absolutely not what they would do. I think any reasonable person can presume that a country like Saudi Arabia that is not known for having open communications with the press, they're not going to tell some YouTube person, or anyone for that matter, anything about the details of the travel schedule of the royal family. That makes no sense whatsoever. Morphonios also went on to say that he had corroborating news articles, none of which corroborated the location of the prince on October 1st. He actually revealed a remarkably conspicuous hole in the reporting on the location of Mohammed bin Salman on October 1st. And on every occasion where I have seen or spoken with Jake Morphonios and simply asked him to present the evidence, which, if it were valid evidence, he could simply bring it up on a mobile phone, which he loves to do. He loves to show us text messages that I've sent him demanding retractions, demanding that he respond to this request for evidence. If he had legitimate evidence, he should just show it. He claims to have already shown it, but I've never seen it. And every single fan of his show that has sent me his supposed evidence, it has not been evidence of the location of the prince anywhere. So people are in the comments right now saying that he cannot be trusted. Jake Morphonios cannot be trusted. The overriding thing, John, as well, the people who are opponents of your theory, they're not presenting evidence that disproves your theory. They're just saying that you shouldn't be trusted and that you're not in Thailand and that you're working for the CIA or the FBI or whatever it is. They're all supporting the theory that Stephen Paddock, lone shooter, shot from the room. You've presented us with video evidence that came from the Las Vegas Metro PD that shows the window wasn't even broken. Basically makes it impossible for Paddock to have shot out of that window the way we've been told that he did.
That's right. The whole thing doesn't add up, and that's what makes it, crazy. You've got so much cognitive dissonance around it that some people think nobody was shot, some people think no one died. So people are so confused, it's outrageous, right? So what people don't seem to be willing to accept is the narrative that one guy did this and that the FBI, the biggest law enforcement agency in the world, couldn't figure out the motive, and yet they closed the case. Why would you close the case if you can't figure out the motive?
Right.
And then I put forward information that says he didn't have the opportunity. The window isn't broken.
Right.
Right. So if the window isn't broken, it doesn't matter how many guns are in the room. It doesn't matter how much ammo is in the room. What matters is the LVM
shot out the window.
Right. That's right. So there were shots taken from the other room, from 32-134. The LVMPD says they found 8 rounds in that room, and I believe that. We see shots coming from 32-134, but we don't have any gunfire coming from 32-135. Zero.
Yeah. John, it's a stunning investigation that you've been doing, and earlier, before we began, there were people saying that you and I had gotten into a fight. It's definitely true that after that Jake Morphonios turd in the punch bowl appearance where he showed up and embarrassed himself by lying and steamrolling and doxing or attempting to dox you, there was a time where you and I weren't doing shows. We didn't have a falling out of any kind, but that is what social engineering is intended to do, right? It just injects so much doubt that I just, it sort of wasn't touching it for a while. That's what they want. People will notice that the people that are speaking out against your work aren't coming forward with stronger theories. They aren't coming forward with more information and new information to disprove what you're saying or create a stronger explanation. I mean, every single time you and I have spoken, you've presented some new piece of information that just fits into the puzzle. People are asking why we haven't proven the Crown Prince was in Las Vegas. We don't have any evidence to prove that, but we don't have any evidence to disprove that. If
there's no
Morphonios had successfully presented a newspaper article that showed the location of the Crown Prince, that could be evidence to disprove him being in Las Vegas, but it still wouldn't disprove helicopters in the air. We don't know the motive. We don't know the objective. We don't know exactly what happened. You're looking at evidence. You're drawing conclusions, forming hypotheses. I think you're doing tremendous work, John. I really do hope that people who are watching us right now will go and visit patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. John is doing his sponsor-exclusive podcasts on Patreon now, and I think it's important for people to remember that for almost 2 years, John was doing all this work at his own expense, and I think that the people that you need to be wondering about are those that aren't trying to monetize YouTube channels. John and I had essentially the same idea. This isn't the type of thing that somebody wants to make money off of. That is like even a bad way to phrase it. But in order to continue doing the type of work that John and I do, there needs to be a source of revenue. And if it's not coming from some contractor to the State Department Global Engagement Center, it's got to come from the viewers and the people who are interested in seeing this information. So I hope that people will go to crowdsourcethetruth.com and become sponsors on Patreon or Subscribestar. Visit John Cullen's page on Patreon at patreon.com/IamJohnCullen and help us keep this kind of work going. Send an email to Jake Morphonios and demand that he present these news articles that show the whereabouts of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on October 1st. That would be an interesting thing to see. John, is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap it up for tonight?
Sure. If you go to the John E. Hoover channel on YouTube, what you'll find are a bunch of podcasts that we've been doing over the course of the last few weeks. You'll find information about Axon, the guys that make the body cameras. You'll find information about ShotSpotter, the system that was set up to identify where the shots are coming from. And you'll also learn that the colonel, I think it was colonel, that was in charge of Nellis Air Force Base's anti-terrorism team was fired 2 weeks after the attack.
Wow.
So again, it's not proof of anything, but is that consistent with 6 or 8 helicopters sneaking in, shooting up a concert and sneaking out? Might you expect the Nellis commander fired? There you go. Nellis commander fired 2 weeks after Vegas attack is the name of the video. And, it's just remarkable. I mean, the evidence just keeps adding up, and it just keeps adding up. And this new video that we just released talks about something called the ostrich effect, which is a bias. It's when people are unwilling or uncomfortable looking at information that's uncomfortable, meaning, people often will put off taking an AIDS test because they don't want to hear the results, that type of thing. That's called the ostrich effect. So the ostrich effect is when people don't want to look, they don't want to take it in because the cognitive dissonance is so powerful, it's so strong.
Right.
To comprehend this notion that 6 or 8 helicopters were shooting women in the head it's heinous, and it just can't go on. Not on my watch.
And when you think about it from the standpoint of President Trump, it's a thorny thing to unravel because, like we said, he can't really just come out and say, "Hey, this is what happened," because the result could be the total collapse of the U.S. economy.
That's right. And that's why I haven't thrown the president under the bus. I'm sure the president knows what happened, but the circumstances are so sensitive and so much is at stake.
Yes.
I understand the predicament, but there have been rumors that someone in the Trump family may have been there. Not the president, but someone in the Trump family. That's right. There's rumors. Now, this is unsubstantiated, but if someone from the Trump family had been a guest for a Shura dinner, which is like Passover dinner, who might that have been? So if MBS was there, if KBS was there, might they have invited someone from the Trump family to join them for dinner? And might those people have gotten caught up in all this? We don't know. But there are rumors that someone from the Trump family was a target. I have no way of substantiating that at this point.
Wow. John, it's incredibly compelling work that you've been doing. I think we're going to end it right there for tonight. I wonder, you've got this ostrich effect. Is there a name for the effect if someone's an absolute jerk and you've just told them you don't want to speak to them anymore and they said they would never do your show, but yet they're right here trying to let us know in the comments that they want to debate you in real time. We're not going to be doing that right now. That's a totally separate effect that we don't yet have a name for, but we're going to leave it here, John. I really appreciate your input and thanks for being on the show tonight. I hope people will visit your Patreon page and support the work that you've been doing. You and I have known each other for close to 2 years now. Well, I mean, you know, communicating on the internet and all that. And I mean, again, you know, I'm just feeling more and more like the work that you're doing is, this is closer to the correct answer than what we've heard from anybody else. I really want to encourage people to visit patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. Support the work that John has been doing, and let's have him keep going. John, I will speak to you soon, and certainly anything major develops, you have an open invitation to appear on the show, my friend.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jason, again, for your support and for the open mind, and for everybody out there who's been supporting us. I can't thank you enough. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Don't miss Sunday with Charles tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'll see everybody then. Thanks for watching.